Can you see how this prophecy is gradually coming to pass over time? The Pope is calling for a Sunday Sabbath for the environment to recover. The U.S. President is signing climate bills into law. What does that tell you? Does it ring a bell in your ears? In this video we are going to be looking at the direction towards which this could be leading our world, and we are starting right now. In Revelation 13 verse 12, John, speaking of the second beast, or the beast that came up out of the earth, which is the United States, says, "And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast being the beast that rose up out of the sea, which is the papacy." Let's keep reading. "And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." In short, the prophecy of Revelation 13 declares that the United States shall cause the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the papacy. How is this going to be played out? This will fully be understood as prophecies unfold. Almost all prophecies don't fulfill overnight, and this prophecy is not an exception. Since prophecies come to pass slowly over time, a careful study and analysis of events in comparison with the Bible gives at least an idea, if not ideas, of what is at stake. At first, it was the release of Pope Francis's encyclical on June 18, 2015, calling for a day of rest, specifically Sunday, for the earth to recover. In the encyclical, he, the Pope, is pushing the agenda that Sunday observance will be a solution to the climate change problems our world is facing today. Shortly after the release of the encyclical, the then U.S. President, Obama, released a statement from the White House, saying that the United States must be a leader in pushing the agenda. Since then, there have been so many statements in support of this movement, some of which you might have seen in the previous video.
Today's press statement, the Prime Minister insisted that on the seventh day shall they rest. Therefore, the directive will reflect that on Sunday, supermarkets, mini marts, and those other establishments will be closed.
We're facing a long and tough battle against the virus. That's why we're announcing today that businesses will now be closed on Sundays.
Effective from Sunday, September 18th, the curfew hours will be as follows. Sunday is a no movement day.
The reason why we decided to institute a no movement day, and we decided to do that on a Sunday, is because of the surge of COVID in our city.
Amidst the rising number of COVID cases in southernmost state, Kerala government has decided to continue with a night curfew along with lockdowns on Sunday.
Now Sunday lockdown also kicks in all districts, rural and urban, of Uttar Pradesh. The Sunday lockdown, which was imposed in view of the rising COVID cases in the state, shall continue till 15th of May.
Only Sundays will remain no movement days, effective September 18 to October 28.
Meanwhile, some areas in Mindanao have started to impose a so-called no movement Sunday policy to stop the further spread of COVID-19 cases.
Now, the current U.S. President Biden, as of releasing this video, has signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes climate bills, into law. CNN, Biden signs Inflation Reduction Act into law. President Joe Biden signed a sweeping $750 billion health care, tax, and climate bill into law at the White House on Tuesday. Notice this statement. Biden said during a signing ceremony in the state dining room that the legislation, called the Inflation Reduction Act, one of the most significant laws in our history. Listen to this. Washington, August 16, Reuters. President Joe Biden on Tuesday signed into law a $430 billion bill that is seen as the biggest climate package in U.S. history, designed to cut domestic greenhouse gas emissions as well as lower prescription drug prices and high inflation. The White House, remarks by President Biden at signing of H.R. 5376, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. Look at this carefully. The Inflation Reduction Act invests $369 billion to take the most aggressive action ever in confronting the climate crisis and strengthening our energy security.
And now, I'm going to take action that I've been looking forward to doing for 18 months. I'm going to sign the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay. Here you go. It's now law.
After the signing, this statement was released from Catholic Climate Covenant's Executive Director Jose Agudo. The Inflation Reduction Act provides authentic hope for future generations, bringing our nation and world closer to emissions reduction goals, closer to each other, and closer to a better world. Earth Beat, historic climate law, signed by Biden, has Catholic fingerprints all over it. With the stroke of his pen, President Joe Biden signed into law the largest ever federal action in response to climate change, pumping hundreds of billions of dollars over the next decade into transitioning the nation to clean energy and reducing greenhouse gas emissions that are rapidly heating the planet. Listen to this. Susan Gunn, director of the Marino Office for Global Concerns, said in a statement, referring to the heat waves, wildfires and flooding this summer across the country in much of the world. The cry of the earth, which Pope Francis calls us to heed in his Laudato Si encyclical, finally was heard in the halls of Congress. This legislation is a strong start for the United States to do its fair share to care for our common home. Can you see how this prophecy is gradually coming to pass over time? By examining the prophecy in Revelation 13 verse 12, you can observe a gradual progression where the papacy with the Pope as the head, symbolized by the first beast, is promoting Sunday as a day of rest in order to reduce carbon emissions and combat climate change by advocating environmental conservation. Subsequently, the second beast, representing the United States government, aligns with and supports elements of the first beast's agenda through legislative actions. Look at this statement from the Great Controversy. The assertion that God's judgments are visited upon men for their violation of the Sunday Sabbath, will be repeated, already it is beginning to be urged. And a movement to enforce Sunday observance is fast gaining ground. Indeed it is gaining ground. When you see a movement, both sides, the U.S. President and the papacy with the Pope as the head, calling for the same thing, the same objective or the same goal, regardless of the means, operation or the method being used by them, that must be a signal that the close of probation is near, and the Savior's advent is fast approaching. The Pope is pushing his Sunday as a day of rest for the environment to heal agenda. The U.S. President is signing into law a historic climate bill. This will make passing a Sunday law easier. You probably didn't think we would get to this point at this time, did you? Remember, as the very opening of the fruitful years began the preparation for the approaching famine in the days of Joseph, so must the fast fulfilling of prophecies awaken us to get ready for the soon coming of our Savior. Watch the video on top for updates on Sunday laws, or the one below and see if Ellen White actually qualified to be a true prophet of God.